Now, next topic is services and dependency injection. So we'll talk about Angular 2 services, and we'll talk about the concept of dependency injection, and we'll talk about the injectable annotation. We'll talk about event emitter, and then we are going to see how we can use a pipe within service code. So instead of using pipe in a template, you could actually use a pipe in your code. Okay, so that's what we're going to learn. So Angular 2 services. So this is one of the building blocks. So here, this is the component, and component could actually have some services to be injected. As we're going to learn what the injector does. Injector is basically, you can think of it as a container of service instances. Okay. So what is an Angular 2 service? So almost anything can be a service. Okay. So service is typically a class with a narrow and well-defined functionality or purpose. And the reason that we want to capture certain functionality as a service is because services could be reusable in the same application, or it could be reusable in other applications. Okay. Example services: logging service, data service. For example, if you want to have some kind of service, through which you want to store some data, that could be considered as a data service. The data service is hiding how it actually manage data. It might actually use a databases, or it might use some kind of a REST call to save the data remotely or something like that. Tax calculator service is representing some business logic. Okay, so there is nothing special about Angular service. It's just a class. In fact, Angular has no definition of a service, and there is no service decorator, and there is no place for registration of a service and things like that. Okay, so service is basically a class. Angular provides several built-in services. One of the primary built-in service that we are going to learn is HTTP service, which lets you perform RESTful operations. So it's calling remote RESTful services by sending HTTP request, and that's something we are going to actually look into sometime this afternoon. So we have a choice, in terms of where you put your logic, business logic, in component or a service. In general, you should actually have all the logic in service rather than component. Okay, component class should be lean and mean. The only thing it should do is basically, it is in fact a facade with a UI, so it's basically enable user experience and nothing more. So a good component present properties and methods for data binding. So data binding is basically between DOM and component classes, right? So the component should actually contain just the methods and properties that are needed for data binding with DOM, and everything else should be captured in services. Okay. Now, the concept of dependency injection. The concept of dependency injection is used in every framework out there, so this is not really Angular specific. Okay. What is dependency injection? Dependency injection is a way in which dependency object is going to get injected into depending or target class instead of depending class to create the dependency object itself. Okay, so the target object will receive a dependency object through a function argument or a function parameter rather than itself is creating. Okay, as we all know, dependency injection make code more testable and more maintainable. Okay, most dependencies are services in Angular applications. So services need to be injected into target class, and that target class could be component, it could be directive, it could be another service. Okay, Now, Angular can tell which services a target class needs to be injected by looking at the types of constructor parameters. So the in this case at the bottom here, this is the constructor method of a target class, and when you say customer service with a customer type, then Angular 2 is responsible for creating this customer service object and inject into this object. By the way, if you're using private here, then Angular will also create a private property with that name of customer service and then assign the injected object. If you're not using private, then you have to actually perform the assignment yourself. I'm going to demonstrate that in a few minutes. Okay, so injector. So what is injector? As I said, injector is you can think of it as a container for all service object instances. Okay, so when Angular creates a component, it will take a look at what injected dependencies, what dependency object need to be injected, and it will ask this injector for injecting those service object to the target component. Okay, so as I said, injector is basically contains, it is a container of service instances. Okay, so in this case, suppose I have a component called the hero service and it has a constructor of hero service. Basically, injector is responsible for creating an object, service object of hero service and inject into this component. So how does the injector create a service instance? Basically, if injector does not have the service instance, and then it will create one. Okay, so it does not until you let it know by registering a service provider. Oh, so this is something that you have to be, you have to do yourself. If you need a service object to be injected, then you have to provide that service object. You have to actually specify that service provider object using providers in your module. Okay, so if you miss this guy, then your application will not be able to actually use this service. Okay, provider is something that can create or return a service. Typically, it is a service class itself. So if I have a my service object, you actually specify it as a provider of the service. Okay, so this is something that you have to do yourself. Even though you're using the Angular CLI to create a service, the Angular CLI is not going to add your service to providers as in the case of pipe. So you have to do manually add this service to the application module. Okay, so we're going to actually create a very simple service. This is a log service. Okay, so we're going to actually use the Angular CLI. So we say Angular ng generate service, and you're going to call the service as a log. So it will create a log service. And basically, the only thing it does is basically it will have a log message method which receive the message, and then we might actually add some kind of value add, like we add date and time, the time of the day of logging this service. And then we are going to inject this log service into our app component, and then we're going to actually use it. Okay. All right, so let's do the lab here. So I'm going to actually, so let's make sure the application is up and running. So here, localhost 4200. So we should have app works. Okay. All right, so now we're going to actually create the service. You're going to generate a service. So we're going to say ng generate service. I'm going to call it log. Okay, so it will create the two files. One is the log service, and the other one is the testing code. So if you take a look at SLC here, app here, and you can see we have a log service. Okay, so we're going to talk about this injectable later on. So for now, I'm going to actually remove it. Okay, because we don't need it at this point, right? So it is basically a class, as I said before. Right, now what we want to do is we want to have some kind of method. So log message, and it will receive a message which is a string type, and only thing it does is basically console the log. And this is supposed to provide some kind of value add. So we're gonna actually have a new date, right? And then we are just adding this date information to the log. and then message like this. Okay, so we have a log message inside this log service. So we have a service created. Okay, now first thing you do is you have to actually register this service in the module. So you go to module. We're going to talk about the module later on. So here you have to specify your service for, as part of the provider. So you're going to say log service. Okay, and then you have to import it. Control I, and it is imported. Okay, later on you're going to actually kind of skip this guy and see what happens. All right, so we create a service and then we specify it as a provider. Okay, meaning the injector is going to actually know how to create this service object. Okay, now what we want to do is now we want to use this service in our component class. So I'm going to actually use this app component class. So here we need to actually, in order to get a service to be injected, we need to have a constructor method. Okay, you know what, instead of using app component, let's actually create another component. Okay, so ng generate component, and let's say I'm gonna just call hello. All right, so we create a hello component and we want to inject this log service object injected into hello component. So I'm gonna go to hello component. Here we have a hello component. Now in order to inject the log service, you are going to say the log service, and the type is log service. Okay, now control I so that it is imported, right? So you can see log service is imported from log service.ts file, right? Okay, now without using private, in this case we have to actually create private variable like this. So private and log service, and it is a type of log service. Okay, and then you have to say this log service assigned with log service like this. So now once you got the log service, then we should be able to use the service object in our component. So in our component we'll have hello log message method. So it might actually receive another message and the string type, and here we are going to use this service. So we can actually use this log service and we just pass the message like this. Okay, cannot invoke expression whose type lacks the call no compatible call signatures. Okay, so log service method, we have to call the log message like this. Okay, all right. Okay, so we happen to have hello component which have log service injected, and we are basically using the service object to perform logging operation. So this log service providing log message operation in which is adding the date information as well. Okay, all right. Now just to make sure, so this is the same thing as, if you use the private here, let's say private, then you're going to actually see duplicate identifier log service, right? So if you're using private, then underneath, the Angular will create this guy for you. All right, so we don't need this one anymore, so we can just delete this guy, and we don't have to actually perform this assignment because it's going to be automatically assigned for us. So this is the same thing. So whenever you are using private for injecting a service, underneath you are going to, underneath Angular will create this log service private property for you. Okay, all right, so now we have a hello component that is using log service. Now let's actually have hello component to use this hello log message method. Okay, so we are going to have hello HTML. Okay, so here h4 log service. Okay, so let's button yeah, so let's have input. We want to actually display, we want to actually capture the input value, and then we want to log it. Okay, so input here, I don't need the values, so we only thing we need is basically local template records. So my input, and let's actually have a button click, and this one is so yeah, so this is the one that we're gonna call hello log message method. And we want to pass my input value and log message. Okay, so let's save them all. Oh, so nothing happens. The reason is because we did not add. Anybody know why we do not have the hello message? Okay. Oh, so it looks like we have some. Oh, yeah. So yeah, we have actually mistake right here. Input my input, and okay, good. So now, anybody know why we are not actually seeing this hello component? I don't know why this is all about. Anybody? Why it's not actually showing the this thing? It has to be added to the application component that is bootstrapped. Exactly. So we need to actually go with the app component. So app component HTML, and we need to have the app hello, right? So now we have why is actually saying that it failed to save app module.ts file. The contents is on disk is near. Click on. That's so interesting. Okay, so we have some issues. Let me see. App component app modules.js. So we have log service. Says failed to save app module.ts. The content on disk is new. Click on compare. Yeah, that's interesting. I haven't actually changed anything, so I don't know why it's actually complaining about this. So we save them all, and let me actually just let's stop this guy. We'll actually start over. Okay, so I'm gonna actually open folder services app. Okay, so now still actually have an error. This component app component. I don't know. I mean, okay, so let me just clear that guy, and we'll just open it again. Visual Studio. Okay. And okay, so all right, so that looks better. Okay, so we're gonna actually start it again. ng serve, and then we should now see. So yeah, let's wait until this is up and running. Okay, so almost done. Okay, good. So now we should actually see the messages. Yeah, I should do it automatically, but yeah, let's just kind of click this guy, loading. Oh, why is still having some issues? It says no provider for log service. Oh, okay, so no provider for log service. Okay, so it looks like this module thing, services app. Yeah, so this is services app. Yeah, we have added providers right here, so I don't know why it's actually complaining about it. Providers. Oh, you know what? Somehow hello component is not added. That is interesting. So hello component. Yeah, this is very strange. You know, when we generate the component, you should actually add. Okay, so let's see. All right, so we added everything. So let's see whether it's actually behaving correctly. Okay, that works better. So now we have a log service. Now, you know, whenever I type JPassion.com log message, you can see the message is now being displayed. It's actually being logged with this date and date and time information. Okay. All right. So this is a very simple service architecture where we created the log service and then we inject it into one component. And then we see it in action. Okay, so I'm going to give you guys about 5 to 10 minutes to do this lab. Basically creating a log service and inject it, and then then use it. Okay. Okay, let's get started again. The next service we'd like to create is a data storage service. Basically, it's a very simple service in which it's going to maintain some data for us. It might actually, use a database. It might actually save the data remotely and things like that. But, the idea is that your component should be able to use this data storage service to store this whatever data that is passing to it. Okay. All right, so we're gonna actually create a two component, John component and Mary component, and John and Mary component will actually ask this data service to save some data that is passing. Okay, so let me demonstrate that. So here, we're gonna actually create a service, ngg. Oh, let's actually create a component first, right? So ngg component and John. So we'll create two components, and then we are going to create a service. Then we are going to create Mary. Okay, so you can see John and Mary components are being added to the declaration of the modules. And now we're going to create a service. So ng generate the service, and we're going to call it data service. All right, so we have a data service. So what we want to do is we are going to so again, we are not going to actually use injectable. So we are going to actually remove this guy for now. We are going to actually learn injectable later on. So this data service is going to perform some store operations. So it will have store data, and it will receive some data item. Okay, and so here we are going to do whatever operation we want. For the sake of simplicity, we are going to actually have an array of data. So we're going to actually use kind of in-memory storage. So we're going to actually create my array, and it's going to be string array, and with going to initialize it. So this is kind of internal, so we're going to make it maybe private, right? Okay, and when store data method is being invoked with the data, assuming this is also string, and we are going to just push it, right? So we're going to say this my array push and data. So we are going to just push this data to this internal the array. Okay, so we have a very simple data service. Okay, so now we want to use data service in our components. We have a John and Mary component. So we're going to actually inject this service into John component. So we're going to actually go to John component class. So we're going to use constructor here. So we're going to say private, and the service is data service. So this is the name of the service, and we have to provide the type of it. This is how Angular injector figures out which which service object needs to be injected. So we have data service, okay, and we have to import it Control I. So it's now injected. So we should have, now we should be able to use this data service in this component. Okay, so we might want to have, let's say, store it method. Again, it's receiving data from the UI, and it's going to use this data service. So this data service, and the method is going to be store data, and it's going to pass data, something like this. Okay, so again, very simple. Store it method, which receive the data from the user, then it's using data service to store it. Okay, and it doesn't care how this data service store the data. That is encapsulated inside the service object. Okay. Okay, so now in John component, the HTML, the template, we like to have some kind of, so here, yeah, so H4 data service, and here we are going to have input element. Again, we are going to have just the local template reference. So my input 1, I'm going to just call it my input 1. Then let's have a button click, and it's going to be calling store it, right? And then it's going to pass my input 1 dot value. Okay, and then it will have store it. Okay, all right, so so this is the John, and we want to actually do the same thing for the Mary as well. So we are going to copy this guy, and we will do the same thing for Mary HTML. Okay, so and then component code, it should have the same thing here. So we are going to have the same thing like this in Mary's component. Yeah, for now we're doing a little bit of code duplication, and then we have to import this guy. All right, now so we have two components that are using this data service. Okay, all right, so let's see how it works. Okay, you know, there is actually one thing missing at this point, so I'm gonna actually you know, make it as a quiz for you. Okay, and we'll actually save and see why it's not working. Okay, so refresh the page. Oh, looks like it's actually still running the old code. It's the services. Okay, so ng serve. Oh, okay, so it's not working. So we have a log service, right? Yeah, so the question is why we are not actually seeing the John and Mary here. Bill says, I have lost your video. The audio is fine, but I see the GoToMeeting page is your today Angular. Oh, okay. So you guys having some issues? Let me just, my question is why I'm not seeing John and Mary here. Because we have not the you know, added John component and Mary component in app component HTML here. So we have to have app John. Oops, yeah, it's not app John, it's JO app J. Okay, and also we have to have a Mary app Mary. Okay, so now we should have at least a template of the John and Mary components. Okay. All right. So now we have a problem. It says no provider for data service. So what action should it take? So what does this mean? No provider for data service. Anybody? So whenever you have no provider for data service, that means we have not registered this provider, meaning this data service provider, in our module. Okay, so we have to go app module.ts file. Okay, and then we have to specify log service and data service and import that class, save the change, and now we should actually see at least the John and Mary. Okay, good. So this is from John and this is from Mary. Okay, so we're gonna actually use a different so we'll say this is from John, and this one is from Mary. Okay, so now we should actually see John data service and then Mary data service. All right, so we can just say Sang and store it. Yeah, so we're not actually seeing any response because we're not displaying anything. So what we want to do is we are going to create data service. Let's say get all data, something like that. Get all data. Okay, and then it should return string array. So string array type. Okay, and then we are going to return my array like this. It should say this. Okay. All right. So we can actually have a get all data. So now in John component, so we also actually have the get all data, and here again this is going to use this data service and get all data method, and then we want to receive it into our property. So we're gonna say receive data. Okay, and that's gonna be string array like this. Okay, so we're gonna actually receive it, this guy, and we'll save it into this this received data like this. So we call get all method of the service, and the return value is gonna be saved in received data, so that now we can actually display received data in the John's. So here we are going to have unordered list, and let's say li, and then we're gonna use ng4 directive. Okay, so ng4 directive. So this is the item, and the list is going to be received data. Received data, and is going to be item like this. Okay, and we want to actually do the same thing for the for Mary data service. So we're gonna just copy this guy, and we'll do the same thing for Mary, and also the class. So we can actually provide get all data method. Also, we want to have it in Mary's case as well, and we are going to have the receive data. So we declare here. Okay, so let's see what happens. So whenever we add something, so we need to actually call the get all data as well. So we instead of actually having this one, every time you store it, we are gonna actually refresh it. So why don't I do this? So instead of get all data here, okay, every time you're adding a new item, we're gonna actually call the data service to get all data and just kind of refresh the received data. Okay, so that is what we're gonna do for John as well, like that. Save the change. Okay. All right. So now let's. So we're gonna actually say Boston. Store it. Yeah. So it's displayed. Now it says New York. Okay. So either component, whenever you add something, it will be saved into the data service. So both of them should actually receive these things. Okay, so that is basically what the behavior we want in this lab. Okay, so I'm going to give you a few minutes to finish the creating of this storage service. Okay. Now let's talk about the concept of injectable. So whenever we created a service using Angular CLI, injectable annotation is added to the service. And so far, when we take a look at our service here and data service, we didn't need that injectable annotation. Okay, so without injectable annotation, things are working just fine. So what is this injectable for? Injectable annotation is needed for a service when the service is injected with another service. The reason is, in Angular, you can inject a service only to a class that has some kind of metadata, meaning some kind of annotation. So component already has, when we are injecting a service here, component already have this annotation, so that's fine. However, in service object, if you want to inject another service to this guy, then we need to have injectable annotation. So, what we want to do is, we want to inject a log service to a data service. So whenever store data is being called, we want to use that log service. So we already created a log service, right? Okay, so we just need to inject it. So we're gonna say private and log service, and the type should be log service, and then we are going to import it. Okay, all right, now let's see whether we can actually use this log service. So here log this log service, then the log method, and we're gonna call data. Okay, all right, see whether this one works or not. Okay, so whenever so this is the data service. Whenever either John and Mary store some data, it should not only push the data into the array, but it's also called the log service. Okay, so let's see whether that works or not. Okay, oh, so syntax error, cannot resolve all parameters. Maybe this is actually injectable issue, so let's actually say injectable. So we'll actually have injectable annotation, and then see whether that is gonna actually work like this, injectable. So when a service need to be injected with another service, that's where you need to have this injectable annotation. All right, so let's just save it and see whether that's gonna actually work. Okay, so that was the reason, right? Yeah, so you have to, so it's kind of giving you a kind of obscure error message, right? But that's what this injectable is all about. Okay, so now if I send the message, so let's say hello, and if I want to store it, then you can see log service is being used as well internally. This is from John, this is Mary, hello world. Store it, and you can see the log message is log service is actually being invoked. So that is actually injectable. Okay, so I'm going to give you 2 or 3 minutes to finish this exercise. Next, we are going to learn how we can use what is called the event emitter. So event emitter is used to publish some kind of event, and then there are listeners who can subscribe that event. Okay, so that's what event emitter is all about. Okay, so it's used by components to emit custom events. Okay, so you can take a look at this documentation. Basically, it does have, in fact, 2 methods. One is for emitting, emit method, and you can pass some message to emit. Okay, and then so you can think of emit like a publish. You are publishing this message, and then anybody who wants to receive that message need to subscribe. Okay, so subscribe, and basically it's receiving it's actually receiving three function object. Okay, so here we're gonna call subscribe method, and basically we are going to have this function object which receive the data, and basically what we're gonna do is just have this data to be assigned to receive data property, and then we probably want to actually display it. Okay, so let's actually do this lab. So this is again using event emitter. So create a service called the message service that can send and receive a message using event emitter. So internally it will use event emitter, but we're gonna call it message service. And then we're gonna use this message service to send a message from John. So John is gonna use this message service to publish a message, and Mary is going to actually receive this message again using this message service. Okay. All right. So let's create the ng generate service and message. Okay, service. And once you create a service, it's good practice to specify it in the providers as a first thing. Okay, so message service and then import. Okay, Control I. So now that's taken care of. Okay, so now let's actually create the logic in message service. So in message service we're gonna actually have send, well actually let's call it publish message, and we are going to receive message to be published, and we just say string, and here we need to actually use the event emitter. So we're gonna actually create it inside constructor. So we're gonna actually have event emitter, and that's going to be new event emitter like this, and let's just this one should be so we should have this one event emitter, and that should be event emitter type. Okay, and let's make sure that we import it first, and that is from async package. So it is so whenever you actually generic type requires one type argument. Whenever you see this error message, that means you have to provide the generic type. So here we're gonna actually use a string. Okay, well it could be any, right? But let's just use a string. Okay, assuming all the messages are in the form of a string, so we have to use this. So we have created event emitter object. Okay, so in publish message, basically we are going to use this event emitter, then we're going to emit message, emit, and so it's going to publish some kind of a string in this case. So yeah, so that's the message that is received as an argument in the method. So basically this is the publish message using event emitter. Okay, and we also have subscribe message method, subscribe message method, and subscribe message method, and it's basically calling this event emitter. Okay, and we need to subscribe like this. So it's actually have a three the function object, and the first function object is basically receiving data, and then you can so this is like a subscriber, almost like observable like behavior, right? Okay, all right, so event emitter, then we are going to subscribe. Okay, subscribe, and here we could have the three function object. Okay, and this error and complete, again those are optional, and the first one should be data. So that's the only thing that we have to have. Okay, so that function object is going to be receiving data, And for now, we are going to just console log and data like this. Okay, so whenever the message is being received, oh, I don't need this one. Whenever a message is subscribed, meaning whenever a message is received, we are going to just display it. Okay, so we have these two method in the form of message service. So we are going to inject this message service into John. So John will be injected with this message service. So here is going to have private and message service. The type should be message service, and we need to import that class, right? And then we probably have to have, you know, its own version of publish it, receive some kind of message and string type, and then we are going to use the this message service. So we're gonna call it this message service, and the method is gonna be publish. So John is gonna be a publisher, so publish message and send this message. Okay, all right, so John is going to publish, and then yeah, so you know, we might as well take care of the template here. So h4 messaging send message, and we are going to have input, and here we're going to call it my input 2, and then let's have a button, click, and then we are going to send publish it, and we pass my input 2 value. So whatever that is being typed in this input field will be sent as a published data. So publish data. Okay, so that's good. Now we are going to take a look at the now we're going to actually take a look at the subscriber, the receiver of the message. So we're going to go to Mary. Mary is going to have receive message, and right, and oh, so Mary also need to use the you know, the message service. So that message service need to be injected. Okay, so here we're gonna actually have a private and message service, and the type is message service, and we need to import it. Okay, so in the receive message, basically what we need to do is we are going to use this message service. So this message, not data service, message service, and we're going to subscribe message like this. Okay, so when you actually take a look at the subscribe message, so let's save them all, and if you take a look at the message service here, subscribe, and basically only thing it does is the console, displaying console. Later on, you know, we can actually capture this data into our property and display in the UI. Okay, so let's see whether this, at least the logic we have written so far, is going to work. Okay, all right, so we have a published data, and so let's actually see. I'm gonna say hello. I'm gonna publish data, and nothing seems to be happening. Okay, so we expect the you know, Mary is actually so why do you think nothing is being displayed here? Anybody? So you know, the when you call the publish, so this is the message service. So at least let's actually see console log, see whether at least the publish message is being invoked. Publish message called, something like that, and see. Okay, so you know, then it's gonna emit the message, right? So So let's say hello, and when we call publish message, you can see publish message is called. So message has been emitted, right? But why we are not seeing any subscriber message? So we have a subscribe message, and Mary has received message, but we have not called this receive message first, right? Okay, so we probably want to have a button in the Mary. So here, so let's actually here let's have a button, h4 receive message, and we probably want to actually have some kind of trigger of receiving the message. The reason we are not seeing any messages is because nobody's actually subscribing, right? Okay, so button, click, and then we are going to the logic we have in the Marys is receive message. So this receive message is gonna get called when this button is receive message. So this message receive message button needs to be called first before any message can be received. So let's save the changes. All right, so now the first thing you have to do is in fact the receive message. So now Mary is ready to receive the message, okay, and then John is gonna actually send some message. So I'm gonna say hello Boston, something like that. Publish message. Now it is published, and then Mary was able to actually receive the message. Okay. All right, so console log is not that much interesting. So what we want to do is this is the messaging service. So instead of actually console.log, why don't we so I want to actually display the message to be captured and displayed right here. Okay, so what we want to do is we subscribe, and then we receive the data, and then so instead of console log, let's see, we might probably have to have, so let's actually have another property here, message string, and basically we are going to this message and data. So at least the not this one, at least we have this message being captured here, and then we're gonna actually have get message method in the service, and this is going to be just return message. Okay, this message. Okay, so the what we can do in Mary, so this is actually triggering receive the message, and some point we need to actually call we are going to call, so this is I feel like I'm not doing things right. So receive message, we actually this is actually getting ready to receive the message, but we cannot call here message service. We don't want to actually call message service get message here, because it might not actually happen. You see what I'm saying? So what we want to do is so this is triggered, and basically we have so message service, basically we are event message, I have to actually think about it. So Yeah, so if you guys can actually do at least the console here, the part up to that point, that'll be good. I have to take a look at the sample application I built yesterday, see how I can actually save the display the data. There is actually some kind of asynchronous operation involved. Okay, but as long as you can actually say console.log and then data, as long as you can actually do that, that'll be actually good for now. Okay. Next topic is using pipe within service code. So we have seen the usage of pipe in a template in HTML page, but sometimes you want to use pipe in your code, right? So let's see how we can do that. So suppose I want to use date pipe, basically, so in the log service, instead of actually using new date format, we want to use a date pipe to format it, right? So the way that you can get a reference to date object is you can actually reference a date pipe object. So I create date pipe object, and then you specify the locale, and then you get the pipe object, and then you're gonna call transform method of the pipe object, and then you provide the actual value that you want to transform, and this is the argument, and this is a formatted data. Okay, so let's actually convert log service here. Okay, so instead of just using new date format as it is, we'd like to use date pipe. Okay, so here we are going to let date pipe, and you're going to create the new. So any pipe, basically to get an object of it, you specify the name of the pipe, and then you say pipe like this. All right, and here I have to actually provide the locale en-us like this, and let's actually import it. And so now we have a pipe object, and then we can perform the transformation. So here formatted date is going to be date pipe, and then transform not this one, date pipe transform. So why is actually keep just having date pipe. This is annoying. Yeah, date pipe transform, and here we're gonna actually have a new date, and then we are gonna actually provide the argument. The argument is going to be format. So in this case, I want to display mmdd. So mmdd like this. All right. So why is not date top? That's the misspelled. Okay. Oh, that's why it's actually keep giving me a wrong thing. Okay. So now we are going to use the formatted date. Oops. Yeah. And this one should be formatted. Okay. So, all right. So now when you let's actually see whether that works. So here we're gonna actually log message hello, and log message, and then you can see it is actually used correct formatted the pipe. Okay. All right, so for your own exercise, I want you to create the uppercase pipe object and use it to convert the message to uppercase. So basically I want you to convert this message into uppercase, okay, in your logging service method. Okay. All right, so I'll give you about 5 minutes to finish it up, and then